Welcome back to the Ready or Not lore series, where in today's episode we will discuss the Kawayu beach. This video will be divided up into two sections, the first being all in-game / developer confirmed information, and the second being my own theories as to where the world and story may go in the future.
Move quickly and clear the area.
LSPD have been tipped off that a coastal home is harboring a family responsible for the modification of weaponry, making semi-automatic weapons able to be switched to fully automatic. We have 4 suspects. Andy Tran, the family's oldest son, and is likely responsible for organizing the criminal activity. Tom Tran, an important part of the process, but has a tendency to speak too much, causing him to expose the boy's situation to the prying eyes of the LSPD. Vinny Tran, the youngest brother, transferring weapons to buyers around Los Sueños. It appears he doesn't have a developed understanding of the situation. And Diego Perez, who is looked upon fondly by the Tran family. Perez's family have been going through financial issues of their own, and he has inherited the Tran's sense of duty. Civilians on site are Peter Tran, the father of the Tran boys. He is aware of their actions, but recognizes the financial assistance it brings to the family. He's deeply ashamed of them as well as himself. We also have Hugh Huen, which I believe I'm pronouncing correctly, the affectionate mother of the Tran boys. She is looked upon fondly by them, who see her as once being a strong and courageous individual. With that, let's listen to the mysterious call and the mission briefing.
911, this call's being recorded. What's your emergency?
Oh, yeah. I don't have one, but I think you need to send someone to 128 Windy Coast Drive in Kawayu.
Sir, if you don't have an emergency, I'm gonna have to ask you to hang up.
Fine, but make sure you pass this through. Someone is modifying and selling illegal weapons through that address. 128 Windy Coast Drive in Kawayu. You should send someone to check it out.
Can I take your name, please, sir?
No, just send someone to that address. That'll teach him.
Sir?
Oh, fuck.
Okay, everyone, take a seat. Here's what we've got. We've got an interesting one on our hands. The faces you see on your tablets are the Tran brothers. They come from a normal family up in Kawayu. I know it's not our usual hunt, but we've got an arrest warrant for all 3. An ongoing operation watching a car dealership in North Hills, which is a front for a weapon modification ring. We've got 2 guys on the inside at the dealership, and they noted that a lot of really interesting equipment is coming into the shop and being collected by Tao Tran. These parts are not your run-of-the-mill car parts either. We're talking about everything you need to convert a semi-automatic into a machine gun. These Tran boys are in above their heads and swimming in dangerous waters. The intel we got from inside the dealership is linking back to some large and very dangerous names. These boys don't know what they've gotten themselves into.
What are we looking for in the house?
I'm getting to that. Their eldest, An, is a mechanical engineer. They are getting the weapons from somewhere. He's modifying them in the attic with parts he orders from his North Hills dealership. We don't have the confirmation, but I suspect they are selling them through it too. Things are a little complicated though. The boys live at home still. Their parents are older and retired. The boy's mom, Hugh Nguyen, is dying. She's got stage 4 lung cancer. She's the one who called us and gave us the information. Turns out they are struggling for money and can't afford her medical care. Her sons turned their hand to this as a means of getting enough cash to pay for her treatment and help get their dad out of debt.
Shit.
Yeah. And she's bedbound in the house. So when we get in there, we need to move quickly but carefully. I want a small team on the inside with 2 teams waiting on sides 1 and 3 just in case things go south in a hurry. These boys are going to be armed, but I want to avoid a gunfight if we can do so. The parents will be home, and we have nothing tying them to the guns. But we need to clear that house, Mom included. We'll have an RA on the scene to assist. We need to get into that attic and secure as much as we can. We need the Trans to be taken in so we can learn more about what they are doing and who they are doing it for. Any questions? Any issues? Anything that's been missed? Great. Good luck out there, and stay safe.
The biggest thing we learn is that the undercover cops at Caesar's dealership noted that a lot of unique equipment is coming into the shop and being collected by Tom Tran, connecting those two missions. Also, I feel like I need to address this since I've seen a lot of confusion in the comments. The order we play these missions isn't chronological. I'm going to make an updated Ready or Not timeline video at the end of this series, so be on the lookout for that. Regardless, just to give you an idea how the timeline will look, this mission takes place December 3rd, 2025. The dealership is February 10th, 2026, just a few months later. In between those two dates, we have the streamer map, data center, Brixley, and Vol, all of which take place in December and January, respectively. Anyway, back to this map. What I find incredibly sad about this mission is that these boys are in way over their head and are just doing this in order to help pay for their mom's cancer treatment. It appears that there's no other motivation behind modifying and selling these weapons other than trying to help their family, which is a massive change in tone from what we're used to in this game. Also, speaking of that mysterious caller, he states, "That'll teach him," which to me sounds like a brother scorned, leading me to believe that this is one of the Tran boys. Presumably Vinny, as it states, he doesn't have a developed understanding of the situation. Now, I don't know if this is implying that he has some sort of mental disability, or he's just being kept way too far in the dark that calling the cops on his brothers to him wouldn't be that big of a deal because he doesn't understand just how deep they're into the gun running business. Arriving on scene, we see that we're at Los Sueños' equivalent of the Santa Monica Pier, as we can see their version of the pier and the Pacific Wheel off in the distance. Just looking at the outside of the Tran house, we can see it's in complete disarray. The stairs leading off the beach are covered in graffiti and garbage. The streets are littered with trash, with a defunct garbage truck stopped before even more trash and waste. And this isn't just a Tran problem, as every house out here is covered in it. Approaching from a broken wall around the side, we see that this house was likely beautiful once, but now it's plagued by trash, waste, and disregard, leading to the backyard to crumble, literally in the case of the trash-filled pool. Entering through the front door, we see the house isn't faring much better itself. The first thing we see is past due letters discarded on the floor. Stepping forward a bit and looking into the garage, we see a massive crack in the wall, with other tools and shelves discarded. Taking a left, we can find what I presume to be an office with a computer monitor that displays Deco Lab. Your health is our priority, which could be like a MyChart equivalent thing, which as far as I know is a primarily US-based website for patients to access their health and records. You know, when the site isn't down like every other day. Moving back into the hallway, we see presumably a family photo of the extended Tran family back in Vietnam. Much like everywhere else in the house, the living room is in equal parts disarray, with dirty dishes everywhere and more past due bills on the counter. In the kitchen, we can find a corkboard with documents detailing Hugh's treatments, such as things like what to expect with lung cancer and who to call, as well as an extremely high bill. With nothing left in the weight room or the bathroom, let's move up a level to the second story and enter one of the boys' rooms. Not sure whose room this is, but on the desk, they have an FDM and SLA 3D printer, as well as a web page opened on the computer that says, "An auto-sear, the most common automatic conversion device, transforms a semi-automatic gun into a weapon capable of emptying an entire magazine with a single pull of the trigger." This appears to be a website called Quartermaster 3D, which I presume is an illegal site used for downloading and using illegal weapon modification 3D printing files, like a Thingiverse gone bad. The next room over is pretty sparse with a single bed, guitar, and protein powder. But the next room, which again is presumably one of the Tran boys, we see a treasure trove of info. On the couch, duffel bags of money sit with poker chips and money counters nearby. We can also see that whoever this is learning the basics for blackjack. They also have tons of scientific books laying around like Molecular Model Manual, Natural Diseases, Organic Chemistry, and a book on medical practices. We can also see a bottle for 3D printing photopolymer resin. Moving to the desk, we see 3 monitors, and going from left to right, Los Sueños Casino, a loan website, and a website to sell the car we can find outside. One room over, we can find a very sad sight. It's Hugh's room. Medical equipment, get well soon cards, and medical emergency equipment are everywhere. This is a very depressing room to look at because, as we know, the Tran boys are just trying to pay for their mother's medical bills. And based off the equipment seen in this room, we can tell that her condition is extremely serious. Moving up to the final place in the house, we enter the attic. This is where the Tran boys built the weapon modifications. While at first it may appear to be full of just discarded junk, moving to the back, we can see the full extent of the operation. 3D printers are everywhere, with wires and orange filament lining the floors. There are shelves and shelves full of filament, meaning their operation was was in full swing, and based on how much filament they had and the relatively small size of these weapon modifications, they were likely pumping up boxes and boxes of these modifications. Also, based on how the majority of the printers are FDM and there are only a handful of SLA printers, I assume they are slowly moving over to a SLA-based operation, making their parts with that 3D printing polymer resin, instead of using the filament. Based on the price differences between the two printers, it's going to be a slow and very expensive process. It's also worth noting that there's this guy who typically spawns up here. He's not one of the listed suspects, and I assume he may have been with Los Locos and was inspecting the Tran setup in order to cut a deal, and we just interrupted everything. And that is everything at the Tran house. So let's look at some evidence. First, we have a Coastal Grove oncology bill dated a year prior, highlighting the cost of Hugh's most recent oncology visit, as well as an outstanding price for previous services rendered. The paper is visibly crinkled, as if curled up into a ball and tossed aside. Next, we have a notice from the National Revenue Service regarding some recent discrepancies between the family's spending versus their stated income and jobs. It is dated a month ago. For those of you keeping track, this is yet another Ready or Not universe equivalent of a governmental entity. This time, the National Revenue Service, NRS, is a stand-in for the Internal Revenue Service, IRS. And finally, we have a photo of Peter and Hugh, happy and smiling. The photo looks to be taken around the 1990s. A note in Vietnamese is inscribed on the back, which reads, "Dear children, do not forget the stories about the war and everything we had to suffer to obtain a better life, far away from the violence. I hope that you will soon stop what you are doing. Your father doesn't need any more pain. We don't want you to face imprisonment." And on that depressing note, let's talk about a few things. Wow, okay, so let me just start by saying that this is such a good map. Sure, I love all the MK Ultra, mind control, men murdering cults, and other batshit crazy things we cover in this universe, but a small personal mission like this is such a breath of fresh air. It's just a house with a family in it. That's the map. It's extremely realistic based on how gray the story is. There aren't any good or bad guys. Hell, if anything, I feel like the bad guy. These boys were just trying to help their mother. At first, I thought there might be some nefarious intentions here, especially with the gambling stuff we found, but I think the money earned from gambling is being used for their mother. From what I can gather, the boys sell the parts to their contacts, take the money, and then play blackjack in order to potentially double the money very quickly. Hopefully, at least. Based on the money bags we can find, this either means they are very successful or just about to start gambling. This family is just desperate. Medical bills in America sure as hell ain't cheap, and there's no way they'd be able to make enough money the quote-unquote right way quick enough in order to pay their mom's bills. When pushed to the edge in a situation like this, it's no wonder these boys pulled a Walter White and broke bad. They didn't have a choice. And I believe the worst thing about this whole situation is what happens next. Since we arrested them, we only made more enemies. I would not be shocked if the stress of this whole situation was too much for Hugh and she sadly passed. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if their dad passed shortly thereafter. Remember, their dad is 70 years old and ran away from the violence in Vietnam so that his children could live a better life. In a handful of minutes, everything fell apart. All of his kids arrested, his wife potentially dead, and his house was likely rendered condemned as he's unable to pay the fines the LSPD threw his way after the raid. In the end, he's left with nothing but more debt and no family. I don't think I need to spell out what the dad might do or explain further why the stress would kill him, but I think this whole family's gone. We ruined them. As for the Tran boys, they're in prison for some time, and when they get out, the likelihood of them going straight is laughable. Why would they choose to follow the rules and trust the system when the system is what destroyed their family and potentially inadvertently killed their parents? This map is a clear-cut example of what can happen to real people. This exact situation is so common in real life, just change the crime to literally anything and repeat the scenario, and boom, you have what keeps the for-profit prisons in business. It's a horrible cycle that takes a hell of a lot of strength to get out of. But even still, sometimes strength isn't enough. So I think we'll see the Tran boys again at some point in the future. And I'm pretty sure they're going to be gunning for the officers who did this to their family.